You guys, today we're going to cross into Deuteronomy 20, because 20 comes after 19. And that's significant because I think, so we're going to have finished the Torah in 1 year and probably 11 months. That's my guess. My guess is that we'll finish in November. Isn't that great? So was the 2 years of Torah, but that's all right. And then we'll just start Joshua for Christmas, because why not? So anyway, 19 and 20. Let's just go for it. We're in the thick of the laws. Remember, this is all beginning off of Moses preaching the Torah. Remember, that was the first line of the book, is that Moses is preaching the laws of the Torah. They've already been given most of these laws, but he's now preaching them and applying them to what it will be like for life in the promised land. And so he frames it with the covenant sermons, and then we're in the thick of just hundreds of laws right here. And so here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 19 kind of opens up a new topic about Israel's life in the land. So let's just see what happens. So when Yahweh your God has destroyed the nations whose land he is giving you, and when you have driven them out and settled in their towns and houses, then set aside for yourselves 3 cities centrally located in the land Yahweh your God is giving you to possess. Build roads to them and divide into 3 parts the land Yahweh your God is giving you as an inheritance. Why? Why are you doing this? So that anyone who kills a man or a woman, anyone who kills another person may flee there. Now, if you have a heading, if you have a heading, or look up at the one on the screen, these 3 cities, what are we talking about here? The cities of refuge. So we came across this theme once in the book of Numbers. Actually, it was a really detailed treatment. Here, Moses is kind of summarizing the principle here. So just to get a map in front of you, because that kind of stuff is cool. So, Google Image, there's the whole world, everything in the universe, except maybe the inside of a black hole is on Google Image. It's really incredible. So I don't know where half these drawings come from that I put in front of you, but I'm pretty sure they're accurate, at least by looking at it. So anyway, so the 3 stars here at the left. So here you've got the Lake of Galilee, Jordan River, and then the Dead Sea. And so the 3 cities where say 3 cities centrally located in the land, that's what we're talking about here. Do you remember there's 2.5 tribes that settled on this side of the Jordan River, Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and then the other tribes, 9.5 tribes, settle here in the land. And so here's these centrally located cities, and you can see it's in the northern region, the central hills, and then the southern region. And it's the same for the 3 on this side. Numbers, the other chapter, Numbers 35, that talks about these cities, talks about all of them, the 6 of them, and these 3 over here. But Moses is just talking about these right here. So they're cities of refuge. What on earth does that mean? Verse 4. So here's the rule concerning the man or the person who kills another and flees there to save his life. That's the purpose of these cities. If for one reason or another, there's different kinds of killing, but if you end up taking someone's life, flee, run for your life, and go to one of these cities. Now, one who kills his neighbor unintentionally, without malice aforethought, that's the New International Version. Does anyone else have malice aforethought? What a great translation. That's 19:4. Does anyone else have malice aforethought? I love it. Oh, well, the NIV still has it. Without malice aforethought. What a great Who talks like that? Let's look at other translations. Nope, 19:4. Unintentionally. Oh, unintentionally, but then what follows that? Oh, without having hated him in the past, not hating him previously, when the two had not been at enmity before, and the King James, whom he hated not in the past. That's kind of like Yoda. So whom he had hated not. So you get the idea. The point is that this is, what would we say in English? Not premeditated, unpremeditated, not unpremeditated. It was not premeditated, right? So there was no tension in the relationship, whatever. So it's an accident. And then, so what kind of accident are we talking about? Well, let's think about an ancient accident and a modern accident too, verse 5. So let's say, for example, a man goes into the forest with his neighbor, and they're cutting wood. And as he swings his axe to fell a tree, the head of the axe might fly off and hit his neighbor and kill him. It's surely happened in the history of humanity. Clearly, probably many times. So what should you do? So the whole point is that, oh my gosh, like it's a work accident, but you're responsible. Unintentional. So we wouldn't call it murder then in English. What would we call it? Manslaughter. That's the category, manslaughter. So that man may flee to one of these cities and save his life. Otherwise, the avenger of blood might pursue him in a rage and overtake him. And if the distance is too great, he will kill him even though he's not deserving of death because, hey, he did it to his neighbor without hating him previously or without malice aforethought. Now, go up to verse 6 again, 19 verse 6, avenger of blood. Any other translations of that phrase? We all have avenger of blood? Blood, ooh, that's a little, right? Avenger, yes, avenger of blood. Blood avenger, what translation is that? Yeah, exactly. That's good. That was clever. Oh yeah, the net. Yeah, that's a great translation, by the way. Do you guys know about the Net Bible? Let's pause. You should know about the Net Bible. Yeah, net.bible.org. It's an online translation and commentary that was, when it started, it was kind of like Wikipedia. Anybody could sign up to be a contributor to the notes. Then they found that didn't go well. And so so what they did do is then they assembled a whole team of basically like graduate students and seminary professors, and you had to apply and make a contribution. And it's so awesome. So it's its own English, you can get it in print, but the whole point is that it's a free online translation. And then just copious notes on everything you could ever want to know. It's probably one of the most thorough biblical commentaries online for free. And it's not credited to any one person. And a lot of it is on like text and manuscripts and Dead Sea Scrolls kind of stuff. But then a lot of it is talking about content and stuff like that. Anyway, you should know about the Net Bible, netbible.org. It's great. Okay, so the blood avenger. So we've come across this term before. That is such a great blood avenger. So the word avenger, that's the key word here. Now you've heard about Avengers before, and not in Marvel Comics. The Hebrew term for this is Goel. And it's almost always translated in other passages, Redeemer. So if you know the story of Ruth and Boaz, Boaz is the Goel of Ruth and Naomi's family. So Redeemer, this was a cultural institution that Israel had, and it's the family member, usually one of the eldest males in the family, and he's actually responsible for the well-being of the extended family. And so if the extended family falls into debt, it's the Goel's responsibility to come up with the cash to get them out of debt if they're going to go into debt slavery or something like that. What Boaz does for Ruth and Naomi, that's the duty of a redeemer. But it's also the duty of the redeemer to go get him, to avenge innocent blood, or at least to make sure that someone's held accountable if someone in the family gets murdered. And so you can see that's a great cultural institution, but you can see how it could totally get abused. Because, verse 6, let's say the avenger of blood is just so ticked off because this was my favorite brother-in-law or something like that, and he's in a rage. And so he's not like concerned, did you mean to swing the axe at him? Did it fly off accidentally? He's just ticked and he's going to go. So all of a sudden you have, what if it's unintentional murder, then you have innocent blood shed unintentionally. But now because of the Goel, you're going to have more innocent blood shed. And so that's not good. So verse 7, this is why I command you to set aside for yourselves three cities. So the whole purpose of these cities really is to prevent more innocent blood from being shed than is necessary. And what's our equivalent of this process? I was thinking about this morning. In terms of how so let's say somebody commits a crime or they're a suspect to commit a crime. Can you punish them, in our culture, can you punish them or get recompense before some kind of judicial process? What will happen to you if you go beat up the person that, I don't know, that you think robbed your uncle's house or something like that? I don't know, it's a silly example, right? But I think you'll get in trouble. Yeah, right? So the whole point is that, so I think the equivalent would be when a suspect is taken into custody, right? And then they're safe in prison, right? But they're safe there until, there's the sentencing or whatever, the trial. So that's basically that's the same principle. This is a safe asylum in the case of murder until the judicial process carries out. So let's keep going. Verse 8. So if Yahweh your God enlarges your territory, like he promised on oath to your forefathers, and he gives you the whole land, because you're carefully following all these laws I give you here today, to love Yahweh your God, to walk in his ways, then you are to set aside 3 more cities, and those were the other 3 on the other side of the land. Do this, here's the basic principle. Do this so that innocent blood won't be shed in your land, which Yahweh your God is giving you as your inheritance, and so that you won't become guilty of bloodshed. Now, let's say a man hates his neighbor, and he lies in wait for him. He assaults him, and he kills him, and then he flees to one of these cities. So he had unintentional, here's intentional. The elders of his town will send for him, will bring him back to the city, and hand him over to the avenger of blood to die. Show him no pity. You must purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, so it will go well with you. And that ends the principle. So, actually, put your thumb here. Go back, where was this? Go back 1 page to chapter 16. Or I'll just put it up here on the screen, too. 16:18. And this was this verse began a whole section that we explored a couple weeks ago that was all about Israel's leaders. And so here they're told to appoint judges and officials for each of your tribes in every town Yahweh your God is giving you, and they shall judge the people fairly. Or some of your translations have, they shall make a just judgment. Don't pervert justice, don't show partiality, don't accept a bribe. A bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the innocent. And then there's this great line. This is a great line in Deuteronomy. Follow justice and justice alone. Do you remember the Hebrew word for justice? There's actually two that are kind of intertwined. But somebody had a good memory. It's a tzedek. Tzedek. Which means that it's basic right relationship or equitable relationship. So really, these cities of refuge are their kind of cultural expression of this principle right here. And so you can make laws about, all debt slaves go free every 7 years and positive acts, but at the same time, Deuteronomy, Moses, he's a realist, and he knows that tragedies happen and that really screwed up things happen. And so what does justice look like when you're dealing with a tragedy of murder? And so this was their way of doing it in their cultural setting. But the basic principle, it's repeated twice right here, which I think is interesting, is in verse 10, 19:10. It's about preventing innocent blood being shed from the land. And there's something about innocent blood happening in the land that is bad news. Like, you don't want that to happen. And this is a big deal in the biblical world. Can you think of the first story about innocent blood shed and how significant it is? Who's the first person to get murdered in the Bible? It's the Cain and Abel story. And you remember it's the story Cain murders his brother. And then it's the famous line from Genesis 4. Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And this is in Genesis 2, where the whole point is that the origins of humanity are from the dirt. And so when human life returns to the dirt, but not from the ruach, the breath, the life animating breath, going away and natural death, but the blood of humans being shed and poured out on the ground, innocent blood, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal to Yahweh. And it makes him more mad than almost anything else. And so that's what these cities of refuge are all about. It's pursuing justice and justice alone, and making sure that the spiral of violence and the shedding of innocent blood stops at a clear point. Now, this doesn't mean that Deuteronomy shies away from the death penalty, right? That's a whole other thing. But you can see this principle of innocent blood being protected through justice. You guys with me? Okay. Look at verse 14. Oh yeah, one more thing. Don't move your neighbor's boundary stone, set up by your predecessors in the inheritance you receive in the land Yahweh your God is giving you to possess. I don't know if you get the feeling when you read Deuteronomy like this, but you're just like, what? What is that? Remember the line about don't boil a baby goat in its mother's milk? And you're like, where is that? Why is that here right now? So I think what's happening here is, after we've talked about the cities of refuge, the whole point of the cities of refuge is based on their location at 3 different points in the middle of all of the tribes. And so their location is right near the key borders of all you can see of all of the tribal lands. So I think that's what's happening here. And but this was a really, it's hard for us to grasp how significant this was. So the land being apportioned to the tribes, the whole point, you guys remember the year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee was that no matter what happens, you like lose out on an investment that you made and you have to sell all of your land. In 50 years, your family gets the land back, no matter what. Debts are canceled and you get the land back. And so it wasn't just about the cities of refuge. It was that the Israelites' livelihood in the land was dependent on their having land and having the boundaries be in the right places. So here's what's interesting, is that the prophets look back on these laws, and what they see is the Israelites neglecting and violating all of these laws entirely. So I thought you would think that this is cool. In Hosea, the prophet Hosea, chapter 6. Have you guys read Hosea recently? Oh my gosh, Hosea is so great. Look at this line, 6:4. What can I do with you, Ephraim? What can I do with you, Judah? Your love is like the morning mist, like early dew that disappears. Ah, dang it, right? You're just like, yes. So therefore, I'm going to cut you to pieces with my prophets. What? I kill you with the words of my mouth. The prophets are going to say, dude, you guys have failed Torah and you have a covenant curse coming. My judgments go forth like the sun. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I think I've heard that before. Jesus quotes that line twice in conversation with the Pharisees. An acknowledgement of God rather than burnt offerings. As at Adam, they have broken the covenant, they were unfaithful to me there. Now, look at this. Gilead is a city of evildoers. It's stained with the footprints of blood. As marauders lie in ambush for a victim, so do bands of priests. They murder on the road to Shechem, carrying out their wicked schemes. Now, this is a good example where you're reading the prophets and you're like, Gilead, Shechem, I guess they're just, why is he citing these cities as examples? Because they're two of the six cities of refuge. Shechem, and then, it doesn't have the full name. Ramoth, its full name is Ramoth Gilead, because Gilead is the name of this hill region right here. I think I had a different map. Yeah, here we go. Google Images, I'm telling you. So, Ramoth Gilead is one of the other cities of refuge. And so what Hosea is lamenting here, so even think, so Gilead, which is supposed to be a city of refuge, is actually full of people who aren't about justice at all. In fact, Gilead is stained with the footprints of blood. Think about the significance of what he's saying. The whole point of the city was to prevent the shedding of more innocent blood, and it's become just the opposite. So just like, marauders are out there murdering and so on, so somebody goes on their way to Shechem to get asylum, and who should be there plotting their doom? The priests, like the leaders in the city, carrying out their wicked schemes. So this was how good Israel did not do at following the laws of the Torah. But this kind of thing is very common. Actually, it might be a good exercise. We won't do it. But to go read the prophets after a good read through the Torah, and if you're paying attention, all kinds of light bulbs will go off, because half of the stuff that the prophets talk about, that when we read it, we're like, what? I'm just going to go read Galatians or something like that. I mean, it's just really bizarre. Is because they just assume that you know the Torah inside and out, and so they make all these little subtle references to the Torah and so on. So that's what's going on there. Verse 15. Speaking of trials and murder and how you discern justice and that kind of thing, verse 15, one witness is not enough. to convict a person accused of any crime or offense he may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So let's say a malicious witness takes the stand to accuse a man of a crime. The 2 men involved in the dispute must stand in the presence of Yahweh before the priests and the judges who are in office at that time. The judges must make a thorough investigation, and if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against his brother, then do to him as he intended to do to his brother. You must purge the evil from among you. The rest of the people will hear this and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. Show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. The Old Testament. Right? So forget that last sentence. We'll talk about that in a second. Do you see the principle? Again, the justice principle of the first part. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you could be indicted and sentenced because one person brings an accusation against you, what's the possibility of that getting distorted in a huge way and injustice happening? The odds are very high. Now, but is 2 or 3 witnesses, is this foolproof? If you have to convince 2 people to concoct? No, this is actually, it's not. It's better, but it's not foolproof. Again, this is another interesting little reference. One of the most famous stories of this whole process going wrong, it's the story of, it's in 1 Kings chapter 21. And Ahab, you guys know Ahab? He was not a bright spot in Israel's history. And we'll just read it. Sometime later, there was an incident involving a vineyard belonging to this guy, Naboth, the Jezreelite. Now, the vineyard was in Jezreel. So this guy has a vineyard. It's his ancestral land. And it's right close to the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. Ahab said to Naboth, "Let me have your vineyard. I want to grow some vegetables. So, it's right close to my palace, and in exchange, I'll give you a better vineyard. Or if you want, I'll pay you whatever it's worth." And Naboth replied, "Are you kidding me? No way. Yahweh forbid that I give you the inheritance of my ancestors." So here we are, back to the boundary stones and the lines and so on. So I can't do that. Besides, in 50 years, you're going to have to give it back to me anyway, So Ahab went home sullen and angry because of Naboth, the Jezreelite, said, "I won't give you the inheritance of my ancestors." So he lay on his bed sulking, and he refused to eat. Baby. His wife Jezebel came in and said, "Why are you sullen? Why won't you eat?" It's like my 3-year-old son. That's how he's acting right now, right? "Because I said to Naboth the Jezreelite, 'Sell me your vineyard, or if you prefer, I'll give you another vineyard.' But he said, 'I won't give you his vineyard.'" Jezebel, his wife, said, "Is this how you act as king? You're a king right now. Get up, eat, cheer up. I'll get you that vineyard." She wrote letters in Ahab's name, placed a seal on them, sent them to the elders and the nobles who lived in Naboth's city with him. In those letters, she wrote, "Proclaim a day of fasting. Seat Naboth in a prominent place among the people, but seat 2 scoundrels opposite him and have them bring charges that he cursed God and the king. Stone him, take him out, and stone him to death." And that's exactly what happens. So, is 2 or 3 witnesses a foolproof mechanism for justice? No. Is anything foolproof as a mechanism for justice? So that's the problem, isn't it? If we read a paragraph like what we just read about the witnesses, and we're like, "Oh, these primitive ancient people," and so on, like, dude, we have no high ground. The Western justice system is justice system is an accomplishment. I don't actually know that much about it, but what I do know, it is impressive, but it's not foolproof. And I don't think any culture has high ground to stand on. So this was their way of doing it. Must be established by 2 or 3 witnesses, and do just a few times of, if you find out that this happened to you, false witnesses, then what you were trying to accuse happens to you, you can at least think that would curb the sinful human heart. Look at verse 21. So, if what you were intending to have done to this person that you concocted a case against, if that gets done to you, what should be done to you in return? And it says, show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, when you hear that line, I don't know, what comes to your mind when you hear that line right there? Happy face or sad face? Why? Why sad face? I'm curious. That's true. I mean, no one's going to have any eyes left at the end of this, right? My hunch is, whether or not you know it, you have Jesus' teaching in the back of your head. You've heard it said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. I'm telling you, don't even resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. If anyone wants to sue you, take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go 2. Give to the one who asks, don't turn away the one who wants to borrow. So, famous teaching from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And he quotes the words that we just read in Deuteronomy, and is like, it's great. It's Jesus, right? So this line is a part of 6 places where Jesus quotes. He seems like he's quoting Torah, and he says, "You've heard it said this, but I say to you." But actually, if you read all the examples carefully, what he's doing is he's quoting passages of Torah that have come to be abused or misused in their setting, particularly by the Pharisees, is what he's aiming most of these at. So when we read verse 21, I think we are thinking in terms of vengeance. Yes, like, you were going to try and take my life, I'm going to take yours. You were going to try and take my eye, I'm going to pluck out yours, or whatever, stab it out or something like that. I don't know, it's gross. But we think in terms of vengeance. And the irony is that in its setting, this line appears in a few places. That misunderstanding has actually turned completely upside down the meaning of this line. So we think of, I'll say it this way. So we think of eye for eye. We read it as vengeance. Bible reads it as a ceiling, or what I'll call them a maximum proportion of recompense. So, if somebody hired 2 witnesses against you to accuse you of robbing their house, and you're going to have to pay $2,000 because it's somehow falsely shown that you stole their stereo system or something like that. But let's say the judges figure it out, and they figure out, no, this was a concocted scheme or whatever. What can you demand to have done to the 2 false witnesses? Can you have them executed? No, that would be a violation of this principle. Can you have their hands cut off? No. What actually is the maximum that you can have done to them? They owe you $2,000. That's it. Because eye for eye, tooth for tooth, whatever it was, that the whole point is that to prevent, this whole thing is about justice and preventing the spiral of violence. And so even when justice is done, it shouldn't be done in a way that whatever the recompense is, it's somehow greater than the thing that was done, because then you're just creating more opportunity to keep the issue going. And so, so the whole point is creating a ceiling here. And I think it's precisely that meaning that Jesus is responding to right here. So you've heard it said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. In other words, you've heard it said that if someone wrongs you, you have the right to wrong them back. But Jesus says, no. So let's say someone slaps you on the right cheek. And if they slapped you on the right cheek, what hand have they slapped you with? You would think your left hand. And actually, this whole thing is about honor and shame and Jewish, Roman culture and so on. But no, you don't slap with your left hand. What a ridiculous idea. You slap with your right hand. And if you're getting slapped on the right cheek with someone's right hand, it's a backhand slap. And so the whole point is that you've been publicly dishonored by someone giving you a backhand slap. So what should you do in response? You could, if you wanted to, go through some sort of process to have your honor restored, have them held accountable. But Jesus says, no, this is not about vengeance. This is about proportionate recompense. Don't demand your personal rights. Rather, pick up your cross and follow me, which is to give up your personal honor and turn to them the other cheek also. Now, there's a whole thing. Man, I can't wait. We're going to do the Sermon on the Mount later this year on Sundays. I'm really excited about it. But if you turn to the other cheek also, this is a form of resistance, but it's a form of nonviolent resistance. Because if you're turning them to the other cheek, and if they're going to slap you again, they're going to have to slap you not with the back of their hand, but with the front of your hand, front of their hand, which we think, yeah, whatever, it's your hand, whatever. But the difference between this and the difference between this has huge significance in Jewish and Roman culture. You backhand slap subordinates. You front hand people who are worthy and of a status that's the same as you that are worthy of fighting with. And so it's actually a brilliant form of nonviolent resistance, I think. Anyway, that's a whole other deal. My point is that Jesus is responding to this reading right here. There might be instances where you have fully legitimate purpose to assert your own personal rights, and a follower of Jesus will think deeply before demanding their personal rights when they've been wronged. Now, this can also, well, there you go, Jesus. I'm not going to try and explain Jesus right now, because that should just sit with us and bother us deeply, because I think Jesus intended it to bother us. But I think that's what he's responding to. Anyway, isn't that interesting, the ceiling? It's not vengeance, it's about a ceiling. How you guys doing? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, good. So the other place we came across this, oh, you're saying the other times that we see show no pity. Or are you talking about the other times we have eye for eye, tooth for tooth? Yeah. So that's Exodus 23. Because show no pity, sorry, 1 second. Now, okay, you did it to me, Colleen. I'm going down a rabbit trail. This is a full-on rabbit trail right now. Okay, no, sorry. Exodus 21, verse 22. This is the other parallel passage here. So let's say there's two people fighting, and let's say there's a pregnant woman nearby. This is quite a case scenario, but it will illustrate the purpose. So there's a pregnant woman nearby, maybe it's her husband and another guy. And so she gets hit or knocked or something, and she gives birth prematurely, though. Somehow that experience ignites labor. But there's no serious injury. The baby's fine, they're okay. That's still an offense, though. Hitting a pregnant woman, that's always a wrong thing to do. So the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take, and then here's the principle here. So again, in this setting, what can you demand? You can't demand that someone be executed if, it was a minor injury, or even if it was serious injury. You can't have them executed if there was no innocent bloodshed. You have to use proportionate justice here. That's the setting right here. So I think in Deuteronomy, the showing no pity is like, take this seriously. These have been false witnesses. This is a serious crime. Don't show any pity. Don't let emotions or compassion in the moment let you violate the principle of justice and just recompense. I think that's what's going on. What do you think? To say show no pity. Mm-hmm. 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 Let's see. It's a great point. But even then, the whole principle is right here. Yeah, that's right. The false witnesses has done to them what they were intending to do to you. So the whole point is that, so how do you measure what is a fair measure of recompense to be done to the false witness? Well, use the age-old principle that we use here in Israel. Don't show any pity, take this seriously, and then use just recompense. That's your point, Dharma. Mm. Oh, right. In other words, like, take it seriously, don't show pity, like, punish the person. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. This isn't a pretty scene. And I think the whole point is Moses is being a realist. Forget chapter 20, by the way. Moses is being a realist here. And the point is, like, take this seriously. Man, so here's something interesting. Purge the evil from among you. This is also a verse from this chapter that gets quoted in the New Testament. Do you know it? Yeah, some of you are like, oh, don't put that passage up there. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, there's a guy in the church who says, in the church of Corinth, hey, I am a follower of Jesus. But he's sleeping with his mother-in-law, his father's wife, or his stepmother. And not only that, the Corinthians are like not dealing with this guy at all. In fact, some of them are like, wow, look at this guy. He can do what he wants, but he still loves Jesus. That's really incredible. And Paul's like, no, dude, he doesn't love Jesus. And he's actually like ruining the whole ethic of the community. So he says basically, kick him out of the community until he recognizes how serious this is. And then he appeals to a number of things, but one of them is, here we go, expel the wicked person from among you, or purge the evil from among you. And it's precisely this phrase right here that we've seen popping up in Deuteronomy. So why did I bring that up? What I bring this up is that in the New Covenant family, this principle is still really a big deal, holding each other accountable to a level of holiness and justice in our own midst, and that we take our own sin really seriously. Now, this is a really, really serious example. But we're here at the balance here. This is a good place to close. We're at the balance of grace and justice. So the community of Jesus is a community that doesn't operate by the terms of the Old Covenant, but it does, remember, look to the laws in Deuteronomy as a source of wisdom and insight into how God wants his covenant people to live. And so there's this balance that when it comes to entry into the community, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you've done. Jesus' death is sufficient for your forgiveness and so on. And then once we're in the community, because the entry point is grace, I think somehow that often creates church communities that are like, and it doesn't matter how you keep living, do whatever the heck you want, and Jesus will forgive you because the baby Jesus eternally smiles upon us, or something like that. And what you don't hear when you get the eternally smiling baby Jesus is Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount, who's like, love your enemies, and like give lots of money to the poor, and pray for people who hate you, and doing these kinds of things. And then when Jesus' followers don't do these things, like, that's a really big deal. We should care about that. And we should care about that to the same degree that we care about the fact that entry into the family of Jesus is through grace. And I'm not even going to say they're in contradiction or tension, but they're two pieces of being a part of a church community that are really important. And so I think that's part of the core principle that's coming out of Deuteronomy 19, is when you see another covenant member who's like grossly, intentionally really doing horrible things, but they still like are acting like they're part of the covenant family, take it seriously and deal with it, and make sure that you've pulled the log out of your own eye before you do that. But that's the Sermon on the Mount. How you guys doing? I think we should pray. There's a lot to ponder here. Let me close with a word of prayer.